Most people work hard their entire lives but never stop to ask one simple question: where did all my money go? You see, money is not just about numbers. It's a test of wisdom, discipline, and faith. And here's the truth that may shock you. Money flows to those who know its rules. If you treat money like a mystery, it will treat you like a stranger. The Bible is full of financial wisdom, principles that teach us how to not only make money but also multiply it and use it with purpose. Yet most people ignore these timeless truths and end up broke, stressed, and trapped in debt. The problem isn't how much money they earn, but how they handle what God has already placed in their hands. In this video, we're going to break down the 10 ultimate rules of money, explained through biblical wisdom. Rules that can completely shift the way you see business, wealth, and life itself. If you've ever felt like money slips through your fingers faster than you can earn it, what you'll learn here might be the turning point you've been praying for. Money is a test of wisdom and faith. Money is never just about numbers. It is a test. Every dollar that passes through your hands reveals how much wisdom and faith you truly have. In the Bible, Jesus spoke about faithfulness with little before being trusted with much. Luke 16:10. Money in this sense is like a spiritual magnifying glass. It shows the condition of your heart and the priorities of your life. Whether you're managing $100 or $100,000, the principle remains the same. How you handle money speaks louder than any words of faith. Think about the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. 3 servants were each given different amounts, and their master expected them to multiply what was entrusted to them. Notice that none of them were told exactly how to invest. They were expected to show initiative and wisdom. In the same way, the money that flows into your hands is a test of whether you will let it slip away or use it to build something greater. It's less about how much you have and more about what you do with what you've been given. In the modern world, money can feel like sand slipping through our fingers. Paychecks come and go. Expenses pile up. And yet very few stop to ask, what is God expecting me to do with this? If you see money as simply a means to buy things, you'll miss its deeper purpose. Money is a tool, and when used with faith and wisdom, it can become a seed that grows into a harvest not just for you, but for others. Wisdom with money begins with recognizing that everything you own already belongs to God. Psalm 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it." When you grasp this, your perspective shifts. You stop being a mere spender and start acting as a steward, someone who manages resources on behalf of the true owner. This mindset not only brings peace, but also aligns your decisions with divine purpose. Faith enters the equation when you trust God's principles even when they don't make sense to the world. For instance, tithing, giving away 10%, sounds illogical to many. But biblically, giving first actually opens the door for greater blessing. Malachi 3:10. The world says save first, spend second, give last. God's economy often flips that script. It's this act of faith that tests your trust in His provision. If you want to win with money, start by asking, how can I honor God with this? That single question changes everything. It influences how you budget, invest, save, and even how you spend. This is not just about financial success. It's about passing the test of wisdom and faith. And once you pass this test, you'll see how naturally it leads into the next rule, one that deals with your mindset toward money itself. Don't worship money, but don't despise it. Money is a powerful servant, but a terrible master. The Bible warns in 1 Timothy 6:10 that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. But notice that it doesn't say money itself is evil. The problem begins when money becomes an idol, something you chase without purpose or moral boundaries. On the other hand, despising money, thinking it's dirty or unholy, can also keep you trapped in financial struggles. True wisdom lies in balancing respect for money without falling in love with it. Imagine a tool like a hammer. A hammer can build a home or destroy one, depending on who holds it and how it's used. Money works the same way. If you see it as a tool to serve your calling, help others, and create value, it becomes a blessing. But if you see it as your ultimate source of security or identity, it will always control you. This is why Jesus taught, you cannot serve both God and money, Matthew 6:24. The question is not whether you have money, but whether money has you. Despising money often comes from cultural or religious conditioning. Maybe you've heard phrases like rich people are greedy or money changes people. The truth is, money doesn't change character. It amplifies what's already in your heart. A generous person with little will be even more generous when blessed with more. A selfish person will simply become more selfish with greater resources. The key is transforming your heart first, then managing money with intention. To avoid worshiping money, develop habits that remind you of its true role. For example, practice gratitude every time you receive income. No matter how small, give a portion back to causes that align with your values. It breaks the grip of greed and keeps your heart soft. Likewise, to avoid despising money, educate yourself on how it works. Read books like The Richest Man in Babylon or Think and Grow Rich to learn timeless principles about wealth and stewardship. Money should never be the end goal. It should be a byproduct of creating value and walking in your purpose. When you see money as a reflection of the problems you solve and the lives you impact, you start treating it with healthy respect. You no longer worship it, but you no longer reject it either. This balance opens doors for growth and prepares you for the next step, learning to multiply what God has already placed in your hands. Multiply what God puts in your hands. The Bible is clear. God expects growth, not stagnation. In the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30, the master commends the servants who doubled their resources but rebukes the one who buried his talent in the ground. This isn't just a story about ancient coins. It's a spiritual and financial principle. Whatever God places in your hands, be it money, skills, or opportunities, He wants you to multiply it. Not out of greed, but because multiplication brings glory to Him and benefits those around you. Think of money as a seed. Seeds are not meant to be stored in a drawer. They are meant to be planted, nurtured, and multiplied. If you have $500 sitting idle, ask yourself, how can I make this seed grow? Maybe that means investing in knowledge first, books, courses, or mentorships that teach you how to make money work for you. Proverbs 4:7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom." Sometimes the best investment is building the mindset before the bank account. The world's wealthiest people understand this principle instinctively. They don't just spend money, they use money to create more money. Take the example of Joseph in Genesis 41. When Egypt faced 7 years of abundance, Joseph didn't let the resources sit unused. He stored, strategized, and positioned the nation to thrive during the 7 years of famine. His ability to multiply what God provided saved millions of lives. That's not just financial genius, it's divine stewardship. Practical multiplication can start small. For example, if you earn a paycheck, consider setting aside a portion for investments that can grow over time. This might mean index funds, dividend stocks, or even starting a side business that solves real problems. The goal is not just to save, but to make your resources active. Money, like a seed, dies when it's buried with no purpose. It thrives when you put it in the right soil, ideas, opportunities, and ventures that align with your values. Multiplication also requires patience. You won't always see instant results, but every dollar wisely invested is like a seed planted in faith. Galatians 6:9 reminds us, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Your role is to plant and water. God brings the growth. With each step of multiplication, your confidence grows, and you start seeing the game of money differently. Once you understand that your job is not to hoard but to multiply, the next question becomes, when is the right time to move? That's where the next principle, the power of timing, comes into play. The power of timing in God's economy. Timing is one of the most overlooked principles when it comes to building wealth. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens." In the world of money and business, understanding God's timing can be the difference between breakthrough and burnout. Just because something is good doesn't mean it's good for now. Knowing when to act, when to wait, and when to pivot is a skill that separates the wise from the reckless. In investing, timing often determines your return. Think of Joseph again in Genesis 41. He didn't wait for famine to start preparing. He acted during the years of abundance, positioning Egypt for survival and prosperity. In modern terms, that might mean saving aggressively during prosperous seasons or buying undervalued assets when everyone else is panicking. Timing is about discernment, knowing the season you're in and aligning your financial moves accordingly. Many people lose money because they move too fast or too slow. They buy into trends because everyone else is doing it, or they freeze in fear when opportunities arise. Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." Rushing without wisdom is just as dangerous as doing nothing. Timing is both a spiritual and practical discipline. It requires prayer, patience, and preparation. From a business perspective, timing can mean knowing when to scale. Expanding a business too early can drain resources, but waiting too long can let competitors dominate the market. Consider how Apple strategically times its product launches. They don't just create, they create at the right time. As a Christian entrepreneur or investor, learning to read both market signals and spiritual signs is key. Sometimes God will tell you to wait when logic says go, and vice versa. One practical way to sharpen your timing is by tracking patterns. Study the markets, study your business cycles, and even your own energy levels. For example, the stock market tends to follow certain rhythms. Businesses have peak and low seasons. The more you observe, the more you can anticipate. Pair this with prayerful discernment, asking God for clarity before making big moves. Timing becomes less of a guess and more of a calculated step guided by wisdom. Once you master timing, you begin to see that money should never sit idle for too long. It must move, work, and serve a higher purpose, which leads us to the next rule: keeping your money in motion with intentionality. Keep your money moving with purpose. Money that sits idle loses value over time. Inflation, missed opportunities, and poor stewardship slowly erode its potential. Proverbs 13:11 warns, "Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow." This verse is not just about honesty, but also about action. Money must be managed and set in motion with intention. Just like water stagnates when it doesn't flow, money that isn't moving will eventually flow to someone else who knows how to use it. Think about the early merchants in biblical times. They didn't just store their gold and silver in hidden places. They invested in trade, ships, and goods that could multiply their wealth. The principle hasn't changed, whether it's starting a side business, investing in an index fund, or even acquiring a small rental property. Your money should be out there, working for you, not sleeping in a checking account. A dollar left idle is like a servant refusing to work. But keeping money moving doesn't mean reckless spending or gambling. It's about purposeful circulation. When you direct your money towards something that creates value, a business idea, a growth-oriented investment, or even developing a skill set, that money becomes a tool for multiplying both your income and your impact. For instance, investing $500 in a course that teaches you how to market your business could yield returns far beyond what a savings account can provide. Even in Scripture, we see examples of strategic movement of resources. The Proverbs 31 woman is described as one who considers a field and buys it and plants a vineyard with her earnings. Proverbs 31:16. She's not passively holding her money, she's actively deploying it in ventures that expand her household's prosperity. That same principle applies today. Be deliberate and look for opportunities where your money can grow while also honoring God. Keeping your money moving also involves generosity. Giving is not about losing money, it's about keeping it in the flow of God's economy. Luke 6:38 says, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap." When you release money with a generous heart, you open yourself up to new flows of provision that often come back multiplied. This is part of the spiritual law of circulation. If your money is moving with purpose, the next step is ensuring that some of it is strategically protected, a reserve that no one else knows about. This leads directly into the wisdom of building a secret storehouse. Build your secret storehouse, Proverbs 21:20. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." This verse is more than ancient advice. It's a financial strategy. A secret storehouse is your hidden reserve, a fund that no one else knows about, created for moments of crisis or divine opportunity. It's not about being secretive out of fear, but about safeguarding a portion of what you earn so that you can weather storms or seize unexpected chances. In business and personal finance, having a secret reserve has saved countless people from collapse. Imagine an entrepreneur whose main account is nearly empty due to a slow season, but who has a hidden $20,000 fund that can cover payroll or restart operations. This is not an emergency fund for everyday inconveniences. This is a crisis storehouse for survival and breakthrough moments. Joseph's wisdom in storing grain during Egypt's good years, Genesis 41, is a perfect biblical example of this principle. Your secret storehouse should be untouchable for regular expenses. It's the financial equivalent of a fortress. In practical terms, this could be a savings account, physical cash, or even assets set aside in a form you don't easily access. The key is discipline. You add to this reserve consistently, even if it's just $50 or $100 at a time. Over months and years, this small act of faith and strategy can save you from disaster. Some might argue that this approach conflicts with keeping money moving, but the two ideas actually work together. Your money should be active and working, but a portion of it should always be secured, like a seed kept safe for planting after a drought. Without this storehouse, one financial setback could wipe out years of hard work. Think of it as Noah's Ark. It's better to build it when the skies are clear than to scramble when the flood comes. Creating this hidden reserve also brings peace of mind. You make decisions from a position of strength, not desperation. When you know you have a storehouse, you can take calculated risks in business, knowing that you have a cushion if things go wrong. It allows you to act boldly without fear of being ruined by a single mistake or crisis. This sense of security is priceless. Once your secret storehouse is established, you'll realize how much easier it is to avoid unnecessary spending or flashy lifestyle upgrades. It naturally leads to the next principle: living below your means and avoiding pride-driven purchases. Avoid pride purchases, live below your means. One of the quickest ways to sabotage financial growth is to spend money just to prove something. Proverbs 13:7 warns, "One pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth." In other words, appearances can be deceiving, and pride-driven spending is a silent wealth killer. Real success doesn't come from showing off what you have, but from building something lasting behind the scenes. Think about how easy it is to get caught up in status spending. People upgrade their cars, buy designer clothes, or fly first class not because they need to, but because they want others to see them as successful. Yet many of the wealthiest people in history, from Warren Buffett to biblical figures like Abraham, lived modestly relative to their wealth. Their focus was on multiplying resources, not flaunting them. Living below your means doesn't mean living poorly, it means living strategically. For example, instead of spending $2,000 on a luxury vacation every year, you could invest that amount in a dividend stock that grows steadily. In 5 years, that same money could be funding vacations without dipping into your main income. The discipline to delay gratification is what turns a small paycheck into a lasting fortune. The Bible praises contentment as a virtue. In Philippians 4:11-12, Paul says, "I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances." This doesn't mean settling for less, but being wise enough to know when enough is enough. If you constantly chase a lifestyle that matches or exceeds your income, you'll always stay in financial chains. Contentment and humility free you to focus on building wealth instead of burning it. This principle is also about stewardship. Every dollar, saved or wisely invested, has the potential to create future opportunities. When you avoid pride purchases, you give your money a chance to work for you instead of against you. That's why wealthy people often drive simple cars or live in homes they can easily afford, because their money is busy growing elsewhere. The discipline of living below your means naturally opens the door to the next principle: seeking wisdom from those who have already mastered the game of wealth. Learn from godly mentors and wise investors. Proverbs 15:22 says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." When it comes to money and business, the quickest way to accelerate growth is to learn from those who have already succeeded. Godly mentors and wise investors are like living libraries. They've faced battles, made mistakes, and discovered strategies that can save you years of trial and error. Ignoring their wisdom is like refusing a shortcut to success. In the Bible, we see mentorship and counsel as key elements of growth. Moses mentored Joshua, Elijah mentored Elisha, and Paul mentored Timothy. Each of these leaders passed down lessons that couldn't be learned from books alone. Similarly, when it comes to building wealth, aligning yourself with experienced entrepreneurs or seasoned investors can open your eyes to opportunities you would never see on your own. Warren Buffett, often called the Oracle of Omaha, is famous for saying, "It's good to learn from your mistakes. It's better to learn from other people's mistakes." This advice is timeless. By studying the lives and principles of wise financial leaders, both biblical and modern, you can gain insights on how to grow, protect, and multiply money. Books like The Intelligent Investor or Principles by Ray Dalio are packed with lessons that build on this concept. But there's a critical distinction here. Your mentors should not only be financially wise, but also aligned with your values. A mentor who encourages unethical shortcuts might help you make money, but will lead you away from God's principles. Look for those who blend faith, integrity, and proven financial acumen. Their wisdom is not just about making money, but about building wealth that lasts and honors God. Practical steps to finding mentors include attending financial seminars, joining mastermind groups, or even reaching out to business owners you admire. You'd be surprised how many successful people are willing to share their experiences if you show genuine respect and curiosity. Online platforms like podcasts and YouTube channels can also serve as mentorship if you actively study and apply what you learn. Once you begin learning from wise mentors, you'll realize the power of building relationships with others who share your vision. This sets the stage for the next principle: forming strategic partnerships that create lasting fruit. Form kingdom partnerships that bear fruit. In Ecclesiastes 4:9, we read, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor." Partnerships are not just about splitting the work, they're about multiplying the impact. When you align yourself with people who share your values, vision, and integrity, you create a synergy that accelerates growth, both in business and in faith. These are not just any partnerships, but kingdom partnerships. Relationships rooted in trust, honor, and a shared desire to make money serve a higher purpose. The Bible offers many examples of fruitful partnerships. Paul and Barnabas worked together to spread the gospel. Moses had Aaron to speak on his behalf. Even Jesus sent his disciples out in pairs. Why? Because unity and collaboration unlock greater results. The same principle applies to business and finance. When you find people who complement your strengths and share your goals, you're not just building wealth, you're building something eternal. But forming the right partnerships requires discernment. Amos 3:3 asks, "Can two walk together except they be agreed?" A wrong partner can drain your energy, finances, and spiritual focus. That's why it's crucial to test partnerships before committing. Get to know how someone handles challenges, money, and ethical dilemmas. Look for patterns of integrity, not just profit-making skills. Practical kingdom partnerships might look like co-founding a business with someone who shares your vision of creating value and impacting lives. It could also mean collaborating with investors, suppliers, or mentors who prioritize long-term trust over short-term gains. Strategic partnerships, when done right, reduce risk and open doors that you could never access alone. These partnerships are not about competition, but about collective growth. When both sides bring value and operate with transparency, everyone wins. And just like Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." The right partners will challenge you to grow in ways you wouldn't on your own. Once you've learned to form strong partnerships, the next challenge is internal, guarding your heart and mindset when large sums of money come in, so you don't fall into the trap of the big check syndrome. Guard your heart against the big check syndrome. One of the greatest tests of character comes not when you have nothing, but when you suddenly receive more money than you ever expected. Proverbs 30:8-9 warns us, "Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you." This is the essence of the big check syndrome. The temptation to treat a one-time financial windfall as if it will last forever, leading to reckless spending and a false sense of security. Consider someone who earns $100,000 in a single deal or commission. Instead of managing it wisely over the year, they begin spending as if they'll receive that amount every month. Within weeks or months, the money vanishes and they're back to zero. The Bible gives a clear warning about this in Proverbs 21:5. "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." A big check isn't freedom unless it's managed with discipline and vision. To guard against this trap, always break down big earnings into smaller, planned budgets. Ask yourself, if this were my monthly income, how would I allocate it? A good rule of thumb is to reinvest a portion into assets or opportunities that create recurring income, rather than spending it on luxuries that only provide temporary satisfaction. The wealthy don't just enjoy windfalls, they turn them into foundations for future growth. Biblically, we see this principle in Joseph's strategy for Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, he didn't let abundance breed wastefulness. Instead, he stored a portion, invested in infrastructure, and planned for the famine ahead. Your big check moments are not just for celebration, but for preparation. Think of them as seeds that, if planted wisely, can yield harvests for years to come. Practical steps include setting aside a percentage of any windfall for savings, another for investments, and a portion for generosity. This not only honors God, but also trains your heart to handle wealth without letting it control you. Remember, financial success is not about how much you receive at once, but how effectively you multiply and steward it over time. With this principle in mind, you now have the 10 ultimate rules of money, each designed not just to help you make money, but to keep your heart aligned with God's wisdom. You've just discovered the 10 ultimate rules of money, explained through biblical wisdom. But here's the truth. Knowledge without action is worthless. What will you do with what you've learned today? Will you keep treating money like sand slipping through your fingers? Or will you finally step up and master the game God has laid out for you? These rules are not just about making money. They're about aligning your business, your wealth, and your heart with divine principles that have stood the test of time. Imagine where you could be a year from now if you applied just one or two of these strategies consistently. Imagine the peace of having a clear plan, the freedom of seeing your finances grow with purpose, and the joy of blessing others along the way. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to build my wealth God's way," and watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. If this message spoke to you, don't just walk away. Start applying what you've learned. Pray over your finances, create a simple plan, and commit to mastering these rules one by one. The greatest breakthroughs come to those who are faithful with what's in their hands today. And if this video inspired you, consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you can continue learning how to make money, do business, and build wealth with biblical wisdom. Your financial future doesn't have to look like your past. It can change starting now.